Hey, this is Tim Nybo, co-founder of Vincero. Small batch, premium lifestyle accessories are what we're all about. From automatic timepieces to handcrafted polarized sunglasses, our dedication to craftsmanship runs through everything we do. See, we believe the accessories you choose to carry on a daily basis matter. That's why we design everything in-house, source all of our own materials, and produce in small batches. It's the only way to guarantee everything we make, and the reason we have over 40,000 five-star reviews. Check out why GQ called us their go-to brand, and join our community of over 500,000 happy customers. Shop our watches, eyewear, and accessories at vincerocollective.com/radio. And when you do, take 20% off with code RADIO. That's VINCERO collective.com/radio. And don't forget to apply that code RADIO at checkout for 20% off your entire purchase.
Hey folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mason. Today we are talking to Dorien Cramer about her experience of biking home from Singapore, and home is the Netherlands. And that sounds like a huge and crazy adventure, and it is. But she had some equally amazing adventures that kind of led to this experience. And what I love about Dorien's story is that she's a lot like me in the sense that she's a type B personality. Not sure if that kind of type A, type B personality thing is worldwide. So if you're listening in other parts of the world, you know, type A people have all their planning together. They plan things like years in advance. Everything's dialed in. However, when something goes off, plan or goes off course, the type A people can really struggle. I am married to a type A person. I am 100% type B in the fact that I love things to be free-flowing and creative and there not to be a set plan and to see where things lead. And what I love is Dorien's story is a lot like that. And a lot of times we hear from adventurers that have everything dialed in, or they know there's things that are going to happen that they can't control, but they know where they need to be each day. They stick to that plan. And I love that Dorien's had just so much creative openness to it and so much ability to add things in. And you're going to hear some of the cool and crazy ideas that came out of it and some of the wild opportunities that just kind of showed themselves along the way. So this was an awesome story. I'm very excited to be able to bring it to you. We recorded this a while ago. And by the way, be listening because we are going to be dropping in our feed and our podcast feed very soon the winners of the Adventure Grant. So if you've applied to that and you're waiting to hear back, be listening this week, ideally. We're going to be sharing. So if you see an episode pop up that's like a minute or two talking about the Adventure Grant, it is going to announce the winners. So be listening and keep your ears peeled. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. All right, folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. You heard a little of Dorien's story in the intro, but now we're going to hear from Dorien about this crazy adventure that we're going to talk about. Dorien Cramer, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Where are you coming from? Where's home for you? That's the first question I always ask. And sometimes, especially for the folks out on an adventure, those are not the same places. So again, where is home for you and where are you coming from right now?
I'm at my home now currently in Groningen in the Netherlands, so in Europe. Pretty far from your place, I guess. Other side of the world. So
I'm in the East Coast of the United States, so about as close as I can be here in the U.S. But yeah, that's really
still
cool.
Still pretty far.
Still very far. Yes, very far. Yeah. You can't bike here, but you could bike that distance easily. You clearly did already. So that's it's not too far to go. Not too far to go. So I know you're into bike packing and bike touring. How did you get into that? But also, did you grow up doing this stuff? I know in the Netherlands, cycling is a huge, huge, huge part of the culture. There's like 2 bikes for every person or something crazy, maybe more. Was that just part of life? And when did it start getting, I can go even farther with this stuff?
Yeah, that's a cool question. Bikes are like normal for everyone here in the Netherlands. We use it as a daily way for transport to go to work, school, whatever. So I don't even know. But when I was a small child, I learned to ride my bike. But it was only when I was about 25 years old, I guess. I had this injury in my foot, so I couldn't go hiking, which was the kind of holiday I preferred the most. Then a colleague of mine, she said, "Why don't you go ride a bike, during the holiday?" And to be honest, I thought that was just a stupid idea because, riding your bike with your panniers and everything, I really thought that was only for old people, like retired people. And I just didn't have the image, or I didn't know anyone who was like about my age or in their 20s riding the bike for like long distance. And of course you can like ride a road bike, for sports a few hours a day. But this idea, this image, yeah, I just didn't understand it. But I thought, okay, I have this injury on my foot. I can't really walk. So I'll just give it a try. And then I flew to Ireland for, I think, a trip or 6 or 7 days, and I rented a bike. It was my first trip to cycle the west coast of Ireland, and it was the best experience I ever had because of this physical activity. And I was out there. I was in the rain, in the sun. Of course, it was Ireland, so it's not the best weather
Right.
you get over there. And I was camping, and I was just outside the entire day, but I could cover so many kilometers, like such a distance that when you hike, you can never cover such a distance. So when I was in a boring area, you just cycle for an hour and you already are in a more more adventurous, or I don't know, more in the nature. And that was my first cycling experience. And then I thought, oh wow, I have to thank this colleague, for telling me that I should go on a bike ride, because this was so cool. From that moment on, I bought a touring bike myself, a secondhand, and I just went on short trips. And yeah, it opened my eyes.
I love that you said you bought a secondhand bike. Did you find that just to be more approachable, like as far as a budget? Because a lot of people on this show hear these stories about these amazing adventures, and they're like, well, I could never afford it. What did you do early on for gear to make it possible?
Yeah, the secondhand bike was also because this was my first trip in Ireland, and I really thought this is my new hobby, but I wasn't sure yet. So yeah, I didn't want to spend several thousands of euros, just for a new hobby. And also because I didn't really know what kind of bike I would like, because you have more gravel bikes, more race bikes and everything. So I thought I'll just give it a try secondhand. And because I already did hiking and I worked in an outdoor shop, so I had many gear like camping or sleeping bag and everything. I already owned it. So if for me only the thing I had to buy was a new bike. Yeah.
The coast of Ireland. That's an amazing adventure. Pretty quickly, your ambitions and your vision started growing. What did you want to do next? What was next, and how did you settle? Like, there's so much to choose from. How did you find that next trip that you wanted to do?
That's a good question, because between Ireland and cycling from Singapore back to the Netherlands, there's like there were several years of experience. And I think the summer after my Ireland experience, I went on a holiday with my father and brothers in Austria. So I thought, they go there by car, and maybe I can cycle just a part of the distance to get in Austria. So I took my bike on the train, and I cycled for about 5 days to get to the hotel where I would meet my father and my brothers. And it was very cool because, I know how to cycle, I know how to pitch my tent and everything, but I got lost so many times because I just didn't have the right navigation equipment. I thought maybe I should navigate on my phone or on maps, because I was pretty late, and I'm still am with like social media or smartphone and everything. And I like it in one way, but in the other way, I just too lazy to sort out which navigation app I should use and everything. So I just thought, I'll just find my way using using a paper map and some signs on the road, but I got lost so many times. So there was a very good like learning experience to know that I really needed to buy like a Garmin, for example, to know how to navigate on the road. And also another experience that I learned was in the Netherlands, like the Netherlands is flat as a pancake. And then you go to the south of Germany and to Austria. And I was just so tired. I couldn't cover all the kilometers anymore because of all the hills and all the mountains I had to cover. And I had to eat like the meals for 3 people in one day. I was so tired, and it really humbled me in one way that I thought, okay, I can have many ambitions, but I have to train my body a bit, and I had to accept that I couldn't go as far as I wanted just on my second bike trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for many trips, I just learned and I met other people. And of course, on the internet, there are many blogs or Instagram and whatever. And so there's so much inspiration. There's so many things you can learn, and you can meet other people online who cycle and like they have tips and ideas or things not to do. And I'm always just interested in people in other countries and how do they live. I studied geography just because I'm interested, in how do people live like in the States, for example, what does it look like? So there's still many countries on my list that I wanna see. And with the bike, you cycle in the mountains or in the flatland, doesn't matter where you are, but you really experience the landscape. You feel when you're going down, when you're going up, when it's hot, when it's raining. And that's a combination for me that's just magical.
I'm definitely biased towards traveling by bicycle. That's what I've done the most. A lot of hiking and backpacking is also just absolutely amazing for that wilderness experience, but especially long distance. It's so nice to be a part of the culture, like to see the towns, to meet the people, to see the roadways, and to be able to carry whatever you want, instead of trying to, I don't know about you, but people get very obsessive about their weight when they're backpacking because you're carrying it on your back. You can't enjoy the downhills. Mm-hmm. But on a bike, of course, you can carry a lot more very easily. You can carry an entire jar of peanut butter if you want instead of, a little tiny pack of it or something. But so I want to know, what did your siblings and your dad think when you made it to Austria? Did they think you were crazy?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they thought it was crazy, but on the other hand, they really expected me to do something like that because I'm a bit more adventurous than they are. Although my father, he also traveled when he was younger, when he was my age. The funny thing, though, at that time, I didn't want to bring a full stove and many, how do you say, cutlery and pans and everything. Just a small, easy thing. So the only thing I ate were these packages of dried food that you only have to add like hot water and then just wait a few minutes and then you can eat it. So when I told them that was my kind of meal that I had for these 5 days, like they already thought that I was crazy, but this was, yeah. When they heard that I only ate the dried meals, yeah.
Wow.
On other trips, of course, because I also learned that there are many other ways to cook your food and to buy food and everything. I learned that especially when you're away for a longer time, it's also nice for your body to have this variety of meals. So I could cook my own rice and make my vegetables and everything. So yeah, I developed my kit a bit.
Such a beautiful way to live. Like I've got a huge smile on my face because it's a wonderful way to be, is on the bike. You have everything you need. You don't need anything else than that. In fact, it helps you be more free the less you have in a lot of ways. So, after this trip to Austria, going from basically below sea level to in a lot of parts of the Netherlands to the Alps, kicked your butt in a lot of ways with the elevation and getting there and navigation. What made you want to keep doing this, and what was next? I know that this kept kind of building and building and building till your huge 20,000 kilometer trip. What was the next step in that journey?
I think the next thing was that I wanted to experience whether I liked riding my bike for several weeks, because those 2 trips, there were just 5 or 6 days or 7 days. And for 7 days, even when you don't have a comfortable tent or a chair, everything is fine, for 7 days. But if you want to go on a trip for 4 weeks or whatever, you have to experience, if you still like it, to live this basic. As you told me, on a bike you can bring more stuff compared to on your back, in a backpack, but still it's not your home, and still you don't have so many things with you as you have at home. So I think I cycled in the Czech Republic with my girlfriend of the time, and I chose the Czech Republic because they speak a language over there that I don't speak. Because I speak German, and you can speak German in Austria and in Germany, of course. But in the Czech Republic, I would also experience how you communicate with people if you don't speak the same language, for example. And the food is a bit different, and you don't understand the menu in the restaurant. So I chose these little things to just experience for several weeks something new. So the cycling wasn't that new anymore. I knew that I was able, and I liked it. But how do I like it in another country? And a year later, we flew to China for 1 month, also to cycle there, I think about 3 weeks. And that really humbled me because I didn't understand the language. The maps that we brought weren't updated because in China they were building like every day, and roads were gone on the map, or there were new roads built. So we got lost so many times, and the heat was totally different to what I've ever experienced. But still, I liked it. And although my girlfriend, she didn't like it sometimes, she thought it was, sometimes the days were just too tough for her and she just wants to quit. And I always thought, oh, wow, this is such a new experience. And okay, it's tough. Okay, I'm tired. Or okay, I'm like it's too hot for me or whatever. But I thought, oh, wow, this is a new experience. So then I knew that, I just wanted to go on with this. But I wasn't sure yet. And I didn't really have the feeling that I was able to go on a long trip all by myself. So about a year after we cycled in China, I met someone online, and he was cycling solo from England to the south of Africa. And I asked him if I could join him for a few weeks in Africa. That was fine. And we chatted a bit online, and I thought, okay, this could be cool. And so I flew to Lusaka in Zambia, and I cycled with him for 3 weeks to Windhoek in Namibia. And I've never been before in Africa. So the culture was totally new. I was on the road with someone I didn't know before. It was really hot, and there were so many new experiences. But also, when I look back at the pictures, I was just, there was just a happy me for 3 weeks. It was only cool experiences. And after this holiday with him, I thought, okay, now I really feel that I could do this all by myself. It felt like I was kind of like ready to go on and explore the world solo and for a long period of time.
I've got to ask, meeting someone online to cycle across Africa, or at least for 3 weeks, which you covered a lot of distance. I mean, did that feel like, on paper, written down, that sounds crazy. But to you, your parents must have thought, what is she doing? This is crazy, dangerous place, someone you don't know. What made you feel that this was the right thing to do? Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. If you're like me, when you go to think of what you want for dinner, you forget every single meal you've ever had for your entire life that you've ever liked. You can't even think of a single recipe. Not sure how that happens or why, but HelloFresh is here to help. Make mealtime easy with delicious recipes made with fresh, wholesome ingredients, delivered right to your door. No lines, no hassles, no trying to think of what to cook. Just great tasting meals you can whip up and enjoy in the comfort of your own home. HelloFresh makes it easy to eat what you love. You can customize select meals, swapping out proteins or sides, even add a protein or add a veggie. And now you can even upgrade for organic chicken or organic ground beef or on whatever you want. So there's all sorts of customization going on. And by the way, I did use HelloFresh with our last pregnancy. I've told the story before. I ordered a bunch of these meals, had them ready to go, not so that we were, eating out every night, but we had meals ready to go at the house that I could whip up really quickly that were delicious and nutritious. And it was what my wife wanted. We selected it all beforehand. It was great and actually really helped ease some of that stress with the first few weeks of having a baby. It was awesome. So if you want to try HelloFresh, go to hellofresh.com/ASP60 and use the code ASP60 for 60% off plus free shipping. That's hellofresh.com/ASP for Adventure Sports Podcast, ASP60. Use the code ASP60 for 60% off plus free shipping. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
I kind of expected this question because many people think it's crazy and maybe even like, why do you even take the risk? Because the risks, it could be very dangerous. But for me, it was a chance. For me, I saw the chance of cycling in Africa and do something I really want to do. But I had nobody else to do it with. I didn't know anyone who wanted to go there with me and give it a try. And for me, it was a chance. And of course, I know there are many risks. I have to say that also in the Netherlands, I've had some very bad experiences, not just cycling, but I mean, when I was on the train once, someone attacked me out of the blue. I mean, I've had many experiences that made me think I only live now. If I don't gonna give it a try now, will I ever give it a try? Will I ever explore or see the world or with whatever thing is on my mind? And of course, I know there's a risk, but there's also risk in staying home and never gonna do it because if there's nobody in my network that I trust and I could go cycling in Africa or do whatever, then I just sit here at home and wait. And that's something wait for a chance. And of course, some people told me that I was crazy, and some people even told me that the chance of getting raped is 100%. I thought, please don't think in such a way, because you only take away your own chances in life. And if you're listening to the podcast right now, I can imagine that you think I'm really crazy. But for example, my mom passed away when she was 48 years old. You don't know how long you live your life. And that's really something that I have in me right now, that I just want to take the chance whenever I see it. So that's also why I chose to cycle with Andy in Zambia.
We learn so much on this show, but one thing we learn over and over again is that the world is better than people think it is. And getting out there on a bike or on your own feet, or just any way you can, get out there and see it, and meeting people, you realize the world is overwhelmingly a good place and people are good. What did you learn in Africa? Do you recommend this style of adventure, joining somebody that has already planned it, giving folks the opportunity? Because honestly, I haven't given that much thought. I know we've heard stories about it like this, but that could be a really great way for someone who's busy or someone who doesn't know the planning, or someone who's already planning it but maybe does want company. Do you recommend that style of travel, joining someone you've never met?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Of course, there's always this risk that you meet each other on the airport and you think like, oh shit, we don't have the match that you need. Then it can always, like, there's always a chance that it's not working out, but
it's worth the risk, huh?
Yeah, true. And you have to be aware that after this trip, I felt that I wasn't longer able to cycle together with him, because I felt strong enough to do it myself. And before and during, I really thought I just follow him and I go with his ideas, because he also gives me the opportunity to be here and to learn from him. But after, I thought, okay, now I feel strong enough to do it myself. So also to do what I really want to do. And sometimes you don't want to compromise, and sometimes you don't want to follow anymore, but you want to do what you want to do. So
Yeah.
I think it's a really good way, especially if you don't have much time. Or for example, during my longer trip from Singapore back home, my father joined me twice, and a friend of mine, she joined me. And I felt like I was the tour guide and they were on their trip, you know.
You gave them the opportunity.
Yeah, and I gave them the opportunity. And for me, it also felt so cool because I had some nice company. They could discover together with me in a way that otherwise they would never do by themselves.
You know, sometimes you just got to take the risk. I married my wife and I didn't know her at all. Like we barely knew each other, and I just said, let's get married. And there's a lot that could have gone wrong. And for most people that might not work out. But for us, so far, 8 years in, we're doing it. We're doing all right. Sometimes life presents an opportunity. You just take it, not knowing, and it might seem very unwise, but you know, if it falls apart, you learn a lot from it. And this is, wow, what a cool, that's a really big step, I think, in your story is going to Africa and doing that. So what were some of the life events or some of the things that led to the next trip? Because something you're mentioning in this story or in these stories is a decent amount of time in between each trip, like a year or two, or there's time. It's not one after another. There's space built in for working, for saving up money, for planning, for being at home. So what was the amount of space after Africa to your big 20,000 kilometer trip? And what were some of the things that got you ready for that?
Just to make things clear at the beginning, that I never really had the idea of going on such a long trip. Like it wasn't on my mind for years, and it wasn't a dream for years, but it was something that in hindsight, it's easy to look back on all the experience you had that build up to this moment that you feel ready. But after my Africa trip, it was November 2017 when I was back. Africa, sunny, warm temperatures, riding in shorts every day. I came back to the Netherlands. It was raining. December was setting in, the cold months. And I came back at work, and it didn't feel right anymore for me. Just the job I had and everything. And I was really, I wasn't in my place anymore. And 2 months later, my girlfriend broke up with me after 7 years. So that was like very hard for me because I really thought that we had a future together. So the first day I felt totally sick. I was just crying the entire day. And the second day when I woke up, I thought, but now I have nobody that that I'm not responsible for, and I don't have to think about our future, but I can think about my future and I can think about my plan. So I thought, now I have time and money and whatever for my trip, and I can just go whenever I want to go. I didn't want to go straight after she broke up because I felt that I had to, ease my emotions and, feel good again and everything. So I stayed where I worked for several more months, and then I handed in my, 2 months notice to quit the job. I decided to go on a trip in October. So about like 9 months after my relationship ended. And it gave me a kind of direction also. And it gave me so much energy because I thought I was in a job on paper. It was a perfect job. It was really good. I earned good money, but I just didn't like it. And when you don't like it, and when you don't have a relationship anymore, and I didn't bought a house, I rented a house. So I could just quit everything and just go wherever I wanted to go. And so in October, I left, and I moved some stuff to my father's house, and I just left for how long I wanted to go because I quit everything and I could just do whatever I want to do. And it was in 2018. So there was no Corona yet, which made it easier to travel.
So do you think that in life, because we all experience COVID at the same time as a world, pretty much, so there was that clear break in the norm and what's normal, but all of us are going to experience life at different times as far as breakups or deaths or being fired from our job, whatever it is, the pivotal moment. Do you think we need those in life to force us to build room in for adventure, or give us the chance? Because there's a huge increase in adventures and books about adventures, that is, and just people with interesting stories after crises, especially worldwide things. So many people we talked to on this show did their adventure after the 2008 financial crisis here in the U.S. I know there was some worldwide reach to that, but here in the U.S. it was big, and a lot of people lost their job and decided to, hike the Appalachian Trail or bike around the world. COVID, same thing. So many people had life interrupted, which gave them, basically the freedom to do something new, or the confidence, or gave them the chance, really. Do you think we need that in life from either a worldwide or a personal level to make these trips happen? Because it sounds like if you hadn't have broken up with your girlfriend, you may not have done this. What do you think?
Yeah, true. Because then you're like, when your life is going well and you have like everything sorted out and everything is good, there's not really this idea in your mind that says, hey, wake up, maybe life could be over in a few years, or you feel responsible for the people you're with, or in your relationship, or you feel responsible for the job you have, or whatever. And you can see so many barriers and so many things holding you back of a dream that you have, maybe like deep in you, that you're just not aware of every day. But then when something happens, when someone dies, or when your relationship is over, you suddenly, let's speak for myself, I really felt like, oh, but what is my true dream? What is something that I really want instead of just living this comfortable life? And that is, this kind of emotion that I think we're not always aware of, because you just, you go to your job, when you're home, you do some sports, you eat your dinner, and then you go to bed. And it's very comfortable and it's very safe. But it also, safe and comfort also keeps you away from really doing something that you're afraid of, but could bring you a lot in life. So I was, of course, when I took the plane to Singapore, it wasn't just like, la, 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 I go to Singapore. Of course, I was afraid. Of course, there are so many things that are in your head, will I have fun? Will I meet cool people? Will I be lonely and sad every day? I don't know. But I needed this kind of push to think, okay, at this moment, I don't like my life. I'll just give something else a try and fly to Singapore.
Well, tell us about the first week out there. As you began to settle in, what were some of the things that were happening? Anything? Because a lot of times it feels like preparing for these kinds of trips, or early on, is an adventure in itself. There's so many times we hear from adventurers where half their stories come from before the trip even happened, getting ready, or in the first few days. What was it like getting started on this? Was it different than some of your other experiences in the sense of where you were mentally or how you were feeling about it?
I think the biggest difference for me was that I didn't have a deadline. So usually when I go on a trip, I know it's for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or several days, and I just didn't have a deadline. I could be on the road for 5 years if I wanted to, or just for 5 weeks if I didn't like it over there. So that was really strange, because I had this farewell party and I said to everyone, well, I have no clue when I will see you again, because I didn't have a plan. I'm not really a planner, and I really like to improvise. So
it feels so good to hear someone say that they're not a planner, because everyone I talk to all the time is a planner. I'm so glad someone's confident enough to say they're not a planner.
Yeah, I really like it that I'm not a planner, because I like to improvise. But sometimes during my trip, it was so hard that I'm not a planner. Because you have to apply for visa, for example, or I don't know, go to the bank, and then suddenly there's this 4 days holiday and you don't have any money, whatever. So sometimes it's really...
Sometimes it does bite you in the butt. It definitely does.
Yeah. But what I liked, so all the things I did back home before I left was, you do your passport and that kind of stuff. I bought a new bike because I wanted to be on the road, and I like to ride the bike, but I don't really like the maintenance of the bike. I'm not a technician. I didn't want any like stuff on the bike. I can fix the bike, but I don't like it. So I bought a bit more expensive bike with the idea that it needed less maintenance, and so I could just join my trip. And I bought Lonely Planet, and that's it. And I just flew to Singapore, and I stayed there for 5 days or 4 days, and just to get rid of the jet lag and get used to speaking English the entire day, and to get used to the climate a bit. And then I thought, okay, so where am I? Like, where will I go? And I knew that I chose Singapore because I was once before in Southeast Asia, and I thought it was a very comfortable area for a woman alone to travel, because you have many touristic areas where you will meet many other tourists, but you also have many places that are a bit more, well, authentic. I don't really like the word, but more like for the locals. And I thought that's the area I want to explore. But if I feel sick or if I feel homesick or whatever, I can just cycle to Bangkok or another hotspot and go to the bars where all the tourists go, and I'll meet some other travelers. So I thought it was a really nice mix for me. And I just cycled to China. That was my goal, to just have a kind of a direction, because I didn't want to wake up every day not knowing where to go. So I thought I'll just go north, and then we'll see.
I'll aim for one of the largest countries in the world. Just
true. Hard to miss.
Hard to miss going from Singapore. So what were some of the things happening? Like, tell us about the experience. Any strange encounters or interesting things at this portion that really stick out in your mind right now?
Well, the first thing that I have to think of is I had this very romantic idea of Malaysia and the rainforest and everything. But as soon as I set foot in Malaysia, the only thing I saw were these palm oil plantage. And I cycled for 5 days in a row, and the only thing I saw were these plantations. Do I say it right? Palm oil plantations. Oh, wow. And I really thought, like, my God, I really thought that I would be like in the rainforest. And I don't know, I had this adventurous idea. And don't ask me why, because I hardly planned anything. So I didn't really look into the countries, but I just had this idea in my mind of Malaysia. So that was, I think, on the second day that I really thought, okay, I do have to plan a bit more, so I don't cycle on the boring roads or the ugly roads. Yeah, that was a good learning curve again for me, as I was learning through the years. Also during this trip, I was learning a lot. I think that's one of the first things I have to think of. And also, I don't know about you with camping or wild camping. In the Netherlands, it's forbidden to do wild camping.
Oh, wow.
But I thought, if I want to be on the road for a long time, I cannot pay a hotel, every night. But I thought, I was a bit scared to go camping, to start the wild camping, to do it for the first time or the second time. And I was just scared that people would see me, come up to me, that like people I don't want to meet, come to my tent in the night. So that was really hard for me to experience the first 2 nights that I tried it. And then I thought, Southeast Asia is cheap and it's crowded. So I'll just stick to the hotels here. And then later on during my trip where I really need to go wild camping, I'll just give it another try. When I crossed the border from Laos into China, I met 3 other cyclists, and with 2 of them, I cycled for 3 weeks. And during the 3 weeks, we only stayed in a hotel for 2 nights. And all the other nights, we did wild camping. And I just learned from them, how do I pick my spot? Do I make a fire or not? How do I, kind of know which people I can trust? And I don't know for men, cycling solo or traveling solo, how it feels. But for me as a woman, sometimes I was just fucking scared. I'm sorry for using these words, but yeah, you just have to look out for yourself, and that's of course the risk that we talked about before. About cycling in Africa. That's of course cycling solo as a woman wherever you are in the world. There's this risk, and when I left, I knew about the risk, but now I felt the risk, and that's something different for me.
Once you got to China, then what? Like, I mean, you could go across China, you could go, north, you could go east. Oh, I mean, to the ocean, or you could go west all the way home. How did you choose from there?
Well, I kind of had to choose in China how like where I wanted to go in China, because I only got a visa for 30 days. I could extend it once, so I got 60 days in total, and China is way too big to cycle in 60 days. And of course, I heard about the stans like Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, but I just didn't have any idea how it would look. And I thought, I'll just go there and just see for myself. So my plan was to first cycle a bit in the south of China, close to the border with Laos, so Sichuan and Yunnan area. And there I had to extend my visa. And then I took a train to Xinjiang. It's the area which is quite like known now because of the Uyghurs that live there. I don't know if you heard about it, but it's a people that is oppressed. And so in this Xinjiang area, there are many police stations and many police driving around. And for me as a cyclist, I knew it would be a very interesting area to experience, because in Sichuan and Yunnan, I had all the freedom, and people invited me home for food, and I could just go wild camping and do whatever I wanted. And I knew Xinjiang, because there's so many police, they follow you and they just want to know, where did you come from? Where are you going?
Wow.
Did you take pictures and everything? And it wasn't the best cycling experience, like if you want to cycle, but it was such an interesting experience because of the society over there. Even people didn't invite me home, didn't invite me over for food or for a place to sleep, because they thought, they were scared that the police would come and knock on their door because they talked to me as a tourist.
Jeez.
So that was a very strange experience. I cycled there about 3 weeks. And I was very glad that I could cross the border with Kazakhstan and have this freedom back again as a traveler, as a cyclist.
Wow.
Yeah. And so from Kazakhstan, I thought, I was in Kazakhstan. I think I was on the road for about 8 or 9 months. And then I thought, okay, I still like to travel and I don't want to quit now, but I'm not a nomad or someone who wanders across the world forever. So I thought, I'll just be home for Christmas. And I just had about 7 more months before it was Christmas. So I thought, okay, now I'll just plan my route back home to Europe.
I mean, did you make it home by Christmas?
Yeah. There are people who cycle really fast. I made many, many loops and many detours. And I stayed as a volunteer in Kyrgyzstan for several days and in Greece. And I really took my time. So I could have been there in, I think about 3 months, but I took 7.
Wow. Yeah, tell us about some of those detours. What were some of the things that you decided to stop and do, and how did you decide what to stop and do? Because there's, got to be endless opportunities to take detours and to say, hey, I'm going to be here for a while and do something interesting. I find that a lot of you come across so many interesting people because people are interested in talking to you, that you get a lot of opportunities on a bike tour of all kinds of random things, either being invited to help on a farm or to, I don't know, meet other cyclists and go with them for a little while. What were some of those things that you accepted and turned down? Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
Well, about turning down, I cycled in China for 3 weeks with a Swiss couple, and we met up again in Kyrgyzstan, which was really cool because, yeah, we really became friends, and it was so relaxed cycling together and very comfortable for me too, because after being alone for such a long time, when you're with the three of you, you also share responsibilities among the three of you. So it wasn't always me who had to think about the amount of water we were carrying or where are we going to sleep or whatever. So for me, it was really relaxed cycling together. But they decided to cycle the Pamir Mountains in Tajikistan. That's about like plus 4,000 meters in altitude. And since I also cycled in China on such altitude, over there in China, I felt it was really tough for me to do. So every few hundred meters, after cycling a few hundred meters, I just had to stop and catch my breath again. And I really thought it was just too much for me to do. And so when they said they were going to ride the Pamir, I decided to not follow them and to cross Uzbekistan instead. And now back home, sometimes I really feel like, should I have done the Pamir Mountains? Because you hear from so many cyclists that I think, maybe I was able to do it, But yeah. So sometimes you turn opportunities down because, well, for example, I already told my father and a friend, they joined me cycling. So I had like 3 times during my trip, I had a deadline to be somewhere on a certain moment. So sometimes time or visa time just makes you, make choices. But for example, since I didn't have a deadline, I was when I was still in Malaysia, I was asked to be in a TV program for a month. And I had to play.
For a month?
Yeah, for a month. I was a tourist in a TV show covering Malaysia, and so for this TV show, we traveled across the country and we went to resorts and touristic hotspots and whatever, and eat local food, and since I had no deadline, I could just do whatever I wanted to do. And so I was on Malay television.
What? How did that come about? And was that paid?
Well, everything we did was paid for, and I didn't really earn any money.
You got to travel around for free, basically, and see the rest of the country.
Yeah, and we did some diving, and all things that I always wanted to do but didn't have any money for. So now they paid me and even broadcasted it. No, but the funny thing was I was in the Cameron Islands. And I was just hiking there for a day or 2 days. And on a certain moment, it started to rain, like rain heavily. And I thought, I don't want to walk. I'll just catch a ride back to the city. And so I just went to the road, and the first car stops, and there were 4 men in there. And I said, "Hey, you going that place?" Yeah, we're going there. Just get in. And they talked Malay, and I didn't understand. And after a few minutes discussing something among each other, one of them said in English, like, "Are you a tourist?" And I thought, yeah, of course I'm a tourist. But okay. And then, do you want to be in a TV show? And I remember saying, "This is really the worst pickup line I ever heard." Because, of course, I didn't believe that. But yeah, they were really still looking for tourists. So we discussed it through a bit. And then the next day I cycled to Kuala Lumpur in about a week. And a week after we met, we started this television program.
How did it go?
Well, it was broadcasted just a few months ago. And to be honest, and I have to say that I'm really not a good TV host. But okay, it was a fun experience.
It was a fun experience. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that happens when you put yourself out there. And it didn't lead to a new career, for instance, but what a cool experience. What a random thing to be a part of. And it's nothing you could ever plan for. So even if you were a planner, you can't, you just can't, you aren't going to know the people you meet, the opportunities that come across. And I will say this, the most random things happen in a good way. And that's a perfect example of one of those very random things that happens when you're just out there biking. So unbelievable.
True.
So as you made your way back home for Christmas, in some of these places that feel so far from home, I'm sure, like China compared to the Netherlands and Malaysia and whenever you decided to get home for Christmas, did it feel like a just insurmountable distance, or did you feel confident about being able to get there on time?
Before I went on this trip, I thought about cycling home from Singapore, but then I really thought the distance is like, it's too far, like 20,000 kilometers. No, like I could just never get this idea in my head. But when I was already in China, and when I look back on the 6 months that I traveled, and I thought I had so much fun, and covering a big distance goes by covering a small distance every day. And I thought, yeah, I have the time, and so when I made the decision in Kazakhstan, I knew that I was able to cycle it. Also because I gave myself still a lot of time. I wasn't in a hurry, and I had many rest days and many days that I was just like playing a normal tourist in Cappadocia and Turkey, for example. So for me, cycling covering the distance wasn't hard. But for me, was the hardest part, the thing of getting back in the normal life and going from being a traveler and meeting new people every day and seeing new things every day to slowly cycle back into Europe. Of course, Italy is not the same as the Netherlands, but there are many things that look alike, or many things in how people are and what people do. They really look alike how my life would be in the Netherlands. And then I thought, yeah, am I ready, to go back into society? And of course, I already lived in the Netherlands for 28 years. And of course, I knew how the Netherlands would be and how it would be back there. But I've had so many experiences, and I've had so many cool but also very harsh things that I've seen. How could I just, knock on the door of my parents and say, Merry Christmas, I'm back home, and just live on like nothing happened? That was for me, that transition, that was harder for me than thinking about, am I able to cover this distance in these months? It's more like the mental transition.
What often happens is a pretty severe depression after something like this. Get back home, exactly the reasons you said. You go from every moment of every day being something brand new, every kilometer, every face, everything is newness, to a routine and something a little more familiar every day. And also not being able to relate to anybody back home, where no one really understands what you did. Time went by so much faster for them because it's, relatively the same stuff happening every day. For you, time felt, I'm sure, double or triple the time you were out there. Right now, like a year seems to go by so quickly. On a bike or out hiking, a year feels like it's 5. So it's so hard to relate to anybody, especially if you're not in a home that has people who've done it before. So I'm sure it was very hard to transition back. What did you find helpful in that transition?
Writing a book, because every day I had so many experiences and memories in my head, and I tried to share it with people. But most of the people don't even know, and like, not, I don't blame them, but most people don't even know how it feels to not shower for 5 days, or to, for example, be the only woman in a shop, or the only woman you see during a day is myself. That I didn't see any women because they had to sit in their homes, and I was the one having all the freedom to cycle and to meet new people every day. But it's just because it's different culture, and that women weren't allowed to leave their house, and I was there, and all these experiences, I was not able to share with my friends or with my family. And for me, was writing my book. It really made me, how do you say, come at ease a bit, or that I was able to let some of these thoughts just go and just come a bit, become calm in my head. And so I wrote a book in Dutch, but I wrote it not just like on this day I went from this city to that city, but it's a mix of things I experienced on the bike, but also in my head. So also the transition in my head from just experiencing new things every day to the transition coming back home and like, do I already know what I want to do back home or not, and etc. And I wrote it in about 5 months, and that made me really, kind of like finish this chapter and finish this trip altogether. Because when you're home and you park your bicycle, that's not the end of your trip. Your trip is still there in your head.
Do you think it took COVID to write your book? I know we keep talking about stuff like that, but sometimes writing the book is a lot harder than the adventure itself. It's drudgery.
Yeah, and with some experiences, I could just like close my eyes and I still knew exactly how the place looked or how I felt at that moment. And other moments, other chapters were pretty hard to remember and to write down. During my trip, I wrote a diary. And of course, I made many pictures. So, but yeah, thanks to COVID, we had to stay home. So there was no places you could go except just like sit behind your laptop and just write your story.
Any other advice for people who may be thinking of doing something like this? Maybe not as big or maybe bigger, as far as the lessons you've learned and what you wrote your book about.
Yeah, I think my advice would be, don't plan too big of an adventure and just don't plan too much. Just make sure that you have the basics. You have your tent, you have your sleeping bag, you have your gear, and just kind of set direction. My direction was China, but whether I would cross Vietnam or not, I didn't know. I just thought I'll just see whenever I'm close there in the area. And then I was open for all the chances given because I had everything I needed. Of course, if you wanted to go on a smaller trip or even your first trip, just make sure that you talk to someone who has a bit of experience in camping, for example, and a bit in cycling. But you don't have to buy the most expensive stuff to start. You can just start with an overnighter in the backyard of your friends, and just experience this and just start. Just start slowly, and then at a certain moment you feel like, okay, but now I'm ready to go for a bigger adventure. And you'll feel it when you're ready.
Last question, because I meant to ask this, is what part of the world, I know this is probably hard to answer, what part of the world really surprised you as either beautiful or maybe not what you thought, or just maybe you weren't expecting much and it was amazing?
Oof.
I know there are probably many, so if one comes to mind.
Yeah, there are many, but I would definitely recommend go to Sichuan area in China. I was on the Tibetan plateau, so it's not the region Tibet, but the plateau geological area, which is high mountains, and there was just nothing. And in a way, there was so much because it's on such a high altitude. There are not many crops growing, for example. So people live there from yaks, the kind of cows. So they have yak butter and yak milk and yak meat, and they eat everything from the yak. The houses are so beautiful, and because you're in the mountains, whenever you have a problem, people are so generous in helping you because they know there's not much here. And there are not many villages and everything. And people were very generous and very kind to me. And the area is just really beautiful. Yeah, I would definitely want to go back there.
Well, Dorien, thank you so much for joining us. Where can folks find your book?
It's only in Dutch. So I would say on the Dutch website, book website, just check out my name and you'll find it.
Great. Well, I will plug that Dutch website. And we do have a decent amount of Dutch listeners, so folks can read both. But, well, thank you so much for joining us and telling us just, a little bit about this experience. What an amazing adventure. so jealous of the ability. I don't know. It's a perfect trip I would love to do. So, yeah, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. It was great talking about it with you.
First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to this show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to grow in the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.